Man, I'm actually so happy that I've finished this build. I said at the end of the last video that I was going to finish the interior of this build in the next video because it was completely empty and it kind of didn't, well, no, it didn't feel finished at all. So, as I said, the plan was to come to the next video, finish it then, and I could show you what I've done. But I actually just got really caught up playing the game. I was really enjoying myself and I just freestyled the whole thing. And finished it, and I think that it's looking pretty good. And now that I look at it, I'm actually really glad that I did it off camera and I wasn't rushing to get it in a video or anything like that, because by doing it off camera and not, needing to show it to everyone and get some, visionary shots of the whole building process, there was no expectation of what it had to look like. And I took my time and I just had fun making the interior of the build. I mean, don't get me wrong, I would have had fun making it if, I was recording it, but, the interior was something I had no clue what I was going to do for. The whole vision of the build was the exterior, so the interior I was clueless on. So to just put on some music and play Minecraft, with no expectations, I was able to have fun, use different blocks, try things out, break things if I needed to, and it was really freeing and liberating being able to play this game how it's meant to be played, which is just experimenting and, having fun. So it nicely leads me on to my first point, which I primarily learned from making this build, which is that originality and doing things yourself are so important. What I think is that the process of actually making a build and how these really talented builders do what they do is quite a grey area in the Minecraft community. And I say that because a lot of the stuff that you see in thumbnails and Instagram and Pinterest mainly are beautiful, like finalized renditions of what the builder was wanting to make. And not as often are people sticking around to watch the whole 25-30 minute video on what they actually did to make that build. And sometimes even the content creator isn't including their process into the video, which kind of leaves, as I say, that grey area of how did they actually get to this finished product. I think a lot of people are left to fend for themselves and figure out themselves how to get to this finished product that they'll be happy with. And see, that can actually be a really good thing, because going in blind to anything like this or anything creative can often cause people to, just get down on paper or in game exactly what they were thinking. But on the other hand, for me, it kind of went like this. I would see something that someone else has made, which is really impressive. I would want to make something like that myself, or something as impressive for my own world. But I didn't know how to get there. I didn't know how to get to the finished product. I'd found that at that point, I was only really left with two options. Option number one is I can try and brute force copy someone else's build, so I can take the rough shapes and take the details that they've used and the colours that they've used and things, and I can just go from there and try and make something on my own accord using those little tips. Option number two is to actually look up these professionals and really good builders and the people that I'm taking inspiration from, and see if they've got any tutorials out there, and watch those tutorials and step by step copy them so I can build exactly like them. Now, the unfortunate truth with both these options is that if you have actually managed to get to the end of a build without burning out from meticulously copying someone else, then I'd actually bet quite a lot of money that you're not going to be connected to that build at all, and you're not really going to be too proud of it, because it is missing a vital thing, which was any sense of originality while you was making it. I'm only saying this because I have absolutely done this before. I've made something, I've stepped back and I've looked at it and thought, this did not come from me. Whereas on the other hand, I have made things that I have, put a lot of effort into and thought of, and, my own ideas are actually showing when you look at it. And let me tell you, those are the builds that I step back and I think, I'm actually pretty impressed with that. I'm happy with that. And I want to keep playing this game because all that time that I just put in was not a waste, because the final product is something that I'm happy with. And there's definitely something to say about you stepping back and looking at that build once again and actually being able to think, I thought of that, I made that, that is entirely me, I can slap my name on that. And that is a really great feeling and is something that you're not going to get if all you've done is kind of copy someone else. I just want to say before I move on to the next point that I was going to say that I'm not saying don't, look at other people's builds and don't get inspiration from elsewhere, because I think anything creative that anyone's ever made has been inspired probably by something else. So no, don't just stop looking at other people's work for inspiration. What I'm saying is the process of actually diving in yourself and doing it yourself should definitely be something that you try, because that's the only way that that sense of originality is going to get into the builds that you make in the final product. So originality is very important, and it nicely leads me on to my next point. I'm always going to try and not tell you how to play the game. See, the points that I just made about originality and building what you want to make is not me telling you how to play the game, or at least I hope it didn't come across that way. I'm just trying to get the point across that I think you should do whatever you want and whatever you think is going to be fun, because at the end of the day, it's a game. It should be fun. And I think the key distinction with these people that can play for hours on end and, well, for weeks on end and have these giant worlds that keep growing with new creations, I think the key distinction there is that they just build whatever they want. So keeping that in mind, I want to tell you about a conversation that I had recently with two people that play Minecraft or used to play Minecraft. These two people were both fairly young, and one of them hadn't played the game in years, but they played it when it came out and it was, on their iPod or something like that. Well, in the brief chat that they had about the game, I mean, now that I think about it, I wasn't really in the conversation. I was kind of just listening over what they were talking about. But what they were talking about was how they play the game and how they enjoy the game, and when they used to play, what were they doing? Well, funnily enough, they couldn't have had more opposite play styles. One of them was absolutely adamant that everything he built had to be grinded for and he had to get the resources himself. Otherwise, what was the point? He didn't earn anything that he made. The other player, however, had to play in creative, would maybe venture out into peaceful mode at times, but otherwise it had to be creative because they A, had just all the blocks that they needed to build whatever they want, and B, there was no scary, terrifying, stressful mobs to deal with. So it's funny because here you had two complete opposite ends of the spectrum. The first player was saying, how can you play in creative? What's the point? You didn't work for anything. You've got everything at your fingertips and there's no challenge. How are you entertained at all? Whereas the second player also had a good argument, which was, why would you waste so much time getting all these resources when you could just go in creative and make it? And you could just do it there and then. Well, when I was listening to this conversation, or what was actually turning into a bit of an argument, all I was thinking was that I'm never actually going to get more clear evidence than this to prove the point that everybody's playstyles in this game are completely different. I mean, the example there was a little bit more broad. It was just one of them played survival, one of them played creative. But the point that I got from that conversation was that everyone plays differently and has their own ways to enjoy the game. It can go down to something as small as like when they start a world, one might go into the mine straight away and try and get full iron gear, and the other might just wander around aimlessly picking different flowers that they find or anything like that. It just translates to their own way that they enjoy the game, and it shouldn't be a point to argue over. They're just doing what they want to do to have fun. So I actually don't think there's much more to be said there. I guess we can end it by saying the next time you play Minecraft or load up a new world, let's have your only goal to be to play exactly how you want to play, with no outside distractions telling you what to do or what you should be doing, because that's not a thing. Just hop in the world, enjoy the game for what it is, and have some fun. Now, I actually think that that is such an important point, that if you're playing the game, you've got to be playing to have fun, or else what is the point? But I've actually found that in a game like Minecraft, there is one other point that I'm going to touch on that I think is just a little bit more important. Now, before I tell you what that point is, I'm going to read out a definition, and I want you to tell me the corresponding word that matches the definition I'm reading out. The definition is extreme tiredness or a feeling of not being able to work anymore caused by working too hard. Feel free to pause, but if you haven't got it already, the matching word to that definition is burnout. And the reason I wanted to read the definition of that word first is because a lot of the time people hear that word nowadays when talking about Minecraft in this 2-week phase that people go on about all the time. And they hear that word and they just feel a bit like, I've heard it a million times. Yes, I know what burnout is. I don't actually know how to avoid that though. It keeps happening and you keep mentioning it, But how do I avoid burnout? When looking at the definition, things suddenly become a lot more simple. It's put pretty simply, which is you can't work anymore because you've worked too hard. So if that definition doesn't speak for itself, the last thing that I'm going to talk about is managing your own motivation. There seems to have been this really good shift in Minecraft content recently, and I say it's really good, because people seem to be opting out of these 100, 1,000 day hardcore worlds with super efficient farms and giant life-size mega bases, and oh my god, it's too much. But fortunately, I seem to be seeing a lot less of that, which is great. People seem to now be going back to the original Minecraft standard, which is smaller and more intricate builds that have storytelling elements in them and a lot more character. The giant builds that people make can be really impressive. That's obvious. They're huge and they can be really good feats to reach in the game. But for the average player, it's not really what you should be aiming towards. I mean, take it from me, I've tried to make mega bases before on multiple occasions. I think only once I've been successful, and I'll put a screenshot of the base that I made that I actually liked at the end of the process. But with all my attempts at mega bases, including the one that I just showed, you find at the end of the process that what you've been working for so long to make is just a hollow shell. It's an exterior, you're not going to use it unless if you spend the time making a giant interior. So if you don't enjoy what you've just made, then you can kiss your motivation goodbye to start a new project, because all the hours that you put in for the last one seems like a bit of a waste. But at the end of the day, if you do finish a big project and you do like the outcome, I still find it hard to believe that that sense of burnout isn't gonna just start creeping up faster than usual. Look, even I think I might be overthinking this a little bit. Going back to my last point about just having fun, I do think that's important. You just need to do what you want to do whenever you want to do it. But managing your expectations and managing this feeling that people often get of needing to one-up yourself or one-up the last build that you made, I found that managing those things is super important to making sure that you actually want to play again. But at the end of the day, all these things are just things that help me personally and help me enjoy the game and often play a little bit longer than 2 weeks. If I've helped in any way, that's great. But otherwise, you're on your own to try and figure out how to entertain yourself in this massive game. And if you've got any pointers of your own, feel free to let me know, because there's definitely a lot of players that have played Worlds for a lot longer than me. Otherwise, just keep enjoying yourself, and I'll see you in the next one.